Think of an ancient Greek hero, and you probably picture this: a fearless warrior in bronze armor, cutting down enemies on the battlefield, completely unstoppable. It is a popular image, but when we examine the foundational texts of Western literature, that monolithic archetype disappears. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey function as deliberate, opposing arguments about the human condition and heroic values. The oral traditions built these two epics around completely different men: the uncompromising warrior Achilles and the deceptive survivor Odysseus. There is a structural rule in Homeric scholarship called Monroe's Law. It observes that the oral traditions generating these epics strictly avoided overlapping narratives or themes. This quadrant chart maps out the heroic continuum. On the x-axis, we have their method, stretching from physical force to mental cunning. On the y-axis, their goal, ranging from immortal glory down to mortal survival. Monroe's Law proves these characters were engineered to sit on opposite ends of this map, meant to be evaluated against each other. To understand Western storytelling, you have to choose which of these two blueprints to follow. A protagonist cannot hold the absolute glory of Achilles while keeping the survival skills of Odysseus. You have to pick a lane. Let's look at this comparison matrix to evaluate the primary method each hero uses to navigate their world. Achilles operates on bia. That translates to brute physical force and aristocratic martial violence. This input yields a specific result: unstoppable martial dominance. On a battlefield, no one can match him. But pure violence offers zero flexibility. When faced with complex social conflicts or domestic issues, Achilles is completely unequipped to function. Odysseus uses the opposite method. He relies on metis, which means cunning intelligence, mental flexibility, and the ability to manipulate language. This allows him to survive mathematically impossible odds. When a man-eating cyclops traps him in a cave, Odysseus doesn't try to use a sword. He uses a linguistic pun, telling the monster his name is nobody in order to escape. The cost of metis is steep. It demands deceit, trickery, and moral ambiguity. It strips the hero of straightforward, transparent honor. In narrative design, a protagonist cannot be both perfectly honorable and perfectly adaptable. Survival usually requires leaving pure heroism behind. So that is how they operate, but we also have to weigh the ultimate existential goals they are trying to achieve with their lives. Coming back to the matrix, we see Achilles' primary goal is kleos. That translates to imperishable glory. Achieving kleos guarantees absolute historical relevance. His name will be remembered forever as the flawless warrior archetype. The catch is devastating. To secure this glory, Achilles must literally die young in battle, sacrificing any chance at a future, a family, or a peaceful life. Odysseus pursues the opposing goal, nostos. This means survival, homecoming, and the restoration of his domestic identity. Through nostos, he successfully reclaims his household and survives to lead his kingdom in Ithaca. But this survival requires him to endure profound suffering, trauma, and a strict rejection of divine perfection. The text makes this explicit. The nymph Calypso offers Odysseus eternal youth and immortality if he stays with her. He turns it down. He actively chooses aging, pain, and a mortal wife. He recognizes that human identity is defined by its limitations and by time itself. Early Western literature frames the ultimate human dilemma clearly. The price of immortality is death. The prize of survival is a life of enduring pain. These diametrically opposed inputs, their methods, and their goals dictate the actual architecture of the story the hero inhabits. Looking at the final row of our matrix, the structure built around Achilles is driven by fiery passion, or pathos. It results in a fast-paced, authoritative third-person epic. This creates a strictly binary narrative world. The focus is entirely on victory or death on the battlefield, leaving no room for psychological nuance. The architecture built around Odysseus is driven by character, or ethos, and the slow process of recognition. This yields a complex, multi-perspective story. It uses subjective flashbacks and unreliable narration, making it an early ancestor of the modern psychological novel. The structural trade-off here is speed. The pacing slows down significantly, relying on testing, disguise, and deception to build tension instead of immediate action. You cannot simply swap protagonists between genres. A character's internal values engineer the structural reality of the universe they live in. Modern cinematic adaptations frequently strip Odysseus of his deceptive metis, his dark humor, and his linguistic manipulation. By flattening the trickster into a simplified action hero, these stories erase the complex study of trauma and survival that made the Odyssey a masterpiece. When we remove the hero's moral ambiguity, we lose the very tension that makes his journey home feel earned. Here is how to apply this framework today. Students, evaluate the Odyssey strictly through hospitality, survival, and intellect. Writers, if your goal is tragedy and ideological purity, build an Achilles archetype. If your goal is psychological realism and endurance, you need an Odysseus archetype. The Greek ideal presents an escapable binary. You simply cannot have it all. The foundational architecture of Western storytelling dictates your final choice. A protagonist can either be perfect, glorious, and dead, or complicated, traumatized, and alive.